Hi, I'm Robin Higgins, and this is What is the most common chemistry lab injury? All right, well, I don't think there's an official list anywhere, but I think that I can tell you what my own experiences have been and what in general seems to be happening in labs. So, first, I'd say any type of cut or glass injury. Especially in organic labs, you're dealing with all this glassware. Every reaction you do is probably run in some kind of flask that's made of glass, and inevitably that glass is going to break. Sometimes you'll have a tray of tubes that will fall over and they'll all smash on the floor and you'll have to clean them up. And little shards of glass will get through your gloves and they'll cut you. Or if you're trying to undo a completely stopped in stopper and you end up smashing it a little bit too hard and it breaks all over the place, you're holding that glass. So that's the most common, is probably cuts from glass. Second is going to be burns from acid. Which sounds more exciting than it is. Basically, if you're using acid, it's common to have one or two drops kind of fly away and hit you somewhere where your skin is exposed. So chemists, when they're in the lab, they're going to have a lab coat and gloves on and goggles on. So they're pretty well covered, but there's going to be a few vulnerable places. One of them is right on your wrist, in between where your lab coat ends and your glove starts. And so if you're using a pipette, I've done this a bunch of times, and you squeeze all of what you need out, maybe you just squeeze a little bit too hard and one of the drops ricochets and hits you somewhere. Now usually this stings a lot, but it's not a super terrible injury. There is this chemistry urban legend, which I'm pretty sure never happened, but I've heard the story go around, where someone was carrying a 2-liter bottle of very intense acid and they dropped it. And so it made a pool of acid on the floor around them. And even though it was only 2 liters, they couldn't escape because this acid was burning their legs and eventually all of them to death. So, you can kind of go however horrific as you want to get, but I've never actually heard of that happening to anyone. And the third most rare, but still kind of common chemistry injury, just going to be any type of chemical exposure. Most people work in a fume hood, which means that you have a really large ventilation system. But every once in a while, you're going to be carrying something, you're going to forget its top, you're going to stick your head into the fume hood and forget, and you're going to smell something really terrible. And if you're very unlucky or very not careful, you could be really hurt by whatever you smell. So there's smelling things as chemical exposure, and there's also spilling something, so not just like one drop, but if you end up spilling a chunk of a bottle on yourself and you need to go to some kind of emergency shower station. And then again, you can get stuff in your eye. Some people, after a bunch of years of grad school, they get lazy and they have a bad attitude. They don't want to wear goggles, so they'll just do whatever they want to, but then they'll get something in their eye and have to go to the eye wash station, and it's pretty nasty. So yeah, there's a lot of terrible, awful, horrific things that can happen to you in a chemistry lab, but by and large, it's a pretty safe place if you're being careful. I'm Robin Higgins, and this is Common Chemistry Lab Injuries.